All right, so let's take a look at a couple more problems in Chapter 7. We are going to take a look at a couple more lower of cost or market valuations, and also looking at a comparison of the Fifo and Lifo cost assumptions. All right, so on the first one, this is exercise 711. You'll see that we've got items A through E. Again, this is a Fifo situation, but we've got the unit cost in one column. And then the NRV, which they say is the net realizable value, which we're just going to call that the market value. And they got how many units are in hand. So again, what we'll be doing is we'll be comparing our cost to the market. And anytime our cost goes below the market value, there's going to be a write-down situation. And then that write-down will be incorporated into cost of goods sold. All right. So on the next slide, let's take a look. You'll notice, again, going one by one, if cost is 42 and the market's 40, that's a difference of 2. That's going to be a write-down. So 2 times 250 would be $500. On item B, the cost is still less than market, which is what you want, so there's nothing to do. Same thing with item C, the cost is less than market. Again, no write-down. Letter D, the cost is more than the market, so the market's gone down. So there's another difference is 2 times the units on hand would be 2 times 75 would be 150. And then on item E, same thing, the cost is 10 and the market's 8. That's going to be another write-down of 2 times 50 is 100. If you add all these up, that's the total write-down of inventory of 750. That's going to be debited to cost of goods sold and then credited to inventory. Okay. And then again, just one more, it's very similar. And again, they're giving us very similar items. We've got the quantity on hand, the cost, and then the market value at year end. And again, as long as the market value is higher than the cost, then you don't have to make any adjustments. So as you just kind of look at each of these, market value is higher than cost. This is one you're going to have to work with because on chill air, the market value went down. On frosty, the same thing, the market value went down. But on the last one, it looks like market value is still higher than cost. So on this one, we're only going to have 2 items that we're going to have to do any sort of write-downs. And as you can see, here's your calculations. So the difference of 9 times your quantity on hand gives you 1125. On the frosty, the difference is 8 times 60 would give you 480. You add those up. So you'd have to do a write-down or an increase to your cost of goods sold of 1605, and then your inventory would also go down by a total of 1605. All right, so that's essentially how you do it. It's called, again, lower of cost or market. All right, last one is just to show you, again, a side-by-side comparison of Fifo Lifo. So you'll note on this problem, we'll look at the comparisons of cost of goods sold and inventory, and then we'll also look at how our turnover ratios are different compared with each of these methods. So they give us the starting point where we've got beginning inventories, then we've got a couple purchases, and then notice we've got sales on January 10th and January 25th. So we've got 80 units and 75. So we've got 155 units of sales. So the first one I believe we'll look at is the Fifo. And down here, you're going to see how they come up with that cost of goods sold. Again, this is Fifo periodic and Fifo ending inventory. So remember up here, this is kind of like the important area. The number of units sold was 155. And we know that if you add up all your units available, you had 200 total units throughout the whole year. So if you had 200 units and you sold 155, that means that 45 units were left. That's going to be your ending inventory units. So now the job is just to assign a cost to each of these units. So we need to assign a cost to 155 units and also a cost of 45. So on this one, it's easier just to start with the ending inventory because we know if you look at the pool here, we've got 25 at 18, 60 at 20, and 115 at 22. So we know first in, first out. We know that Fifo, first in, first out, the only units that are going to be left are going to be coming from this last cost pool. You would have costed out the first 2 layers. So we can just go right to ending inventory and say, we know that these 45 units should be valued at 22 bucks, and that gives you 990. And then you could just back into your cost of goods sold, which should be 3190. Or if you wanted to kind of do this individually, you could say, well, I need to come up with 155 units. That also means that would be what? 25 units at 18, 60 units at 20, and then the balance you have to take out of this category out of 115 at 22, and you should still be able to figure out your cost of goods sold. But here they're just kind of plugging the numbers to show you that it's pretty easy to get your ending inventory by knowing that you got 45 units left at that last cost pool. And then as long as you know what this formula is, if you plug that number in, you can just take the difference between that to get your cost of goods sold. All right, now under the Lifo approach, remember last in, first out. So on that one, so what that basically means is that we still have the same units. Notice the number of units is not any different. It's just that last in, first out means that when you go to ending inventory, typically we've got 45 units left. We know that 25 have to come from beginning inventory and 20 have to come from this pool. So they're showing you that right here, 25 at 16, and then 20 at 20, that's gonna be your ending inventory. And then you can see how the difference then would get you to cost of goods sold. That would be probably the easiest way to do that one. All right, and then the last part of this is just gonna show you the turnover ratios. So notice it's cost of goods sold divided by average inventory. So under FIFO, LIFO, notice we got slightly different cost of goods sold numbers. And then of course on your inventory averages, let me show you because the PowerPoint slide kind of got jumbled on this. You've got, if you're looking at FIFO, here's your beginning inventory, and then here's your ending inventory. So to get this average inventory, you'd have to take 450 plus the 990 and then divide by 2. And then for LIFO, when you do the number down here, it would be the 400 plus the 800. Again, divide that by 2. That looks like a Z, but that's actually a 2. And then that's what's going to go in that denominator. But for each of these, you can see how that does affect what that turnover ratio is. For FIFO, it says 4.4, and for LIFO, it says 5.6. So from a comparative standpoint, you know, if you're using LIFO, it would actually make your company look like it's selling inventory a little bit faster than under FIFO. If that makes any sense. Okay. All right. So I believe that's it on my comments on these slides. There'll be one more illustration video on your homework coming up.